Welcome back, and we're on to week 3. This week we're going to cover chapters 3 and 4, dealing with office communications and with client information. This lecture will be broken up into 2 videos, one dealing with communication and the other dealing with chapter 4, which is client information. Communication is key in any office setting. You have to realize that most of your communication is going to be privileged information. You need to make sure that you follow the ethical rules as far as communication goes. Use extreme professionalism when communicating, and realize that anything you say or do in a communication setting could be subpoenaed, could be taped, really could be anything. Anybody on the outside could get a hold of it at some point if you're not careful. The most common use of communication is email nowadays. And a lot of people like to put disclaimers at the end of the emails that say, this information is confidential, cannot be used, etc., etc. The problem with this is that once the information has been read, it's not really confidential anymore. So while we do put these disclaimers at the end of our emails, it's better to go at the very beginning of the email, notifying the person who you're contacting that the information is confidential before they actually get to the information itself. However, court cases have been divided on this, and most people usually, most attorneys and paralegals generally put the disclaimer at the end of their emails, but there's actually no Supreme Court rule or model rule to the effect of having to have a disclaimer as far as confidentiality goes. Just know that everything that you do has a need for confidentiality. When using phones, faxes, and emails, make a decision on which form of communication will work better. When talking on phones, I would not recommend leaving messages. Just say who you're trying to get a hold of, who you are, and how to get back in touch with you. Make sure to take thorough messages when you get a phone call and return phone calls promptly. Personally, I use a rule of with myself and with my paralegals is all phone calls and emails must be responded to within 24 hours. Usually this is easily done since most stuff goes to your cell phones nowadays, whether it be email, messages, phone calls. So it's a lot easier to do than it used to be. But usually I use a 24-hour rule. Seems to be good customer service and helps my clients to be happy. Be careful with fax machines, as well as kind of the same thing with mail. You don't want to give away too much information on the faxes because you could mistakenly dial a wrong fax machine, or they could not be received by the recipient that you're trying to get it to. Make sure that when you're checking mail that clients can't see the mail that you're checking, so the client confidentiality is not broken, and make sure that you have a good filing and organizing system in order to do that. Some examples of kind of the email and how to identify an email problem. And lastly, just remember to use passwords. It's very important to have a password on your cell phone, especially if you're going to have confidential information on your cell phone, including emails coming to them. While you may have a spouse, significant other, children, anytime anybody can get access to your phone, there's the opportunity for a break of confidentiality, which is a ethical violation as far as the Attorney Code of Ethics goes. So you need to be careful when using that. Make sure to encrypt everything and have passwords and everything. It may be a hassle, but it's something that must be done. So an overview, remember, as far as communication goes, it's confidential. Make sure that when information that you're sending is not privileged, and keep a close eye on what it is you're trying to communicate to the other side, and make sure you're getting it to the right people. Following up Chapter 3, we're going to talk about Chapter 4, which is Law Office Communications, the message. What we're really going to talk about here is client information and what you need to do with client information. There's two types of information that a client's going to give you. There's a confidential information, and then there's privileged information. The privileged information is stuff like what the case is about, information that you cannot share with anybody else. But there is some legal maneuvering that can be done to get privileged information into court. The more strenuous communication is that of client confidentiality. As you can see here, confidentiality is broader than privilege, and it applies to situations that do not involve testimony or to a broader range of information. You'll receive this information through oral communication, through written communication, and remember, it's not your job as a paralegal to give legal advice. In fact, it would be malpractice and a violation of the attorney ethics if you did give legal advice. Most attorneys don't even give legal advice over the phone, through a first phone call, or in written correspondence either, because it can all be used against you further down the line. Any attorney information or any legal analysis is usually done in person, and is usually done after much research is conducted on the subject that the client is interested in knowing more about. So, before writing a letter or a memo, you should make sure that you're clear on what the message is. Are you writing a representation letter? Are you writing a non-representation letter? A lot of it just depends. Maybe read it aloud to make sure that you got the right language in there that you're looking for. Going back to the oral communication, when you are getting ready to talk to somebody, do they know who you are? Is there any third parties present? Because if there are third parties present that aren't of the party, then confidentiality is broken, and that information is admissible in a court of law. So when dealing with these communications and client information, you need to be very careful as far as what you are putting out there and what's being brought in. So make sure that you have the information that you need to give in front of you, that you're knowledgeable about the information that you're going to be giving, and that you're careful as to who you're giving it to. And I will see you next week.